much for the introduction. And I've prepared a few slides to be the opening of this panel. And okay, so let's begin. So the topic of this panel is the causality and large models, a two-way road. So in this panel, we want to discuss how causality can benefit from the large models and how causality can benefit the large models. So in particular, so I will give some more details. I will give very quickly. The first of all is about the causal task. So in the causal community, in general, we are interested in two tasks, right? The first is causal discovery, and second is causal inference. So the causal discovery, we aim to answer whether a treatment T causes Y. So this is a discovery problem. And we also want to know how does the treatment cause Y. So what is via a quantitative way, right? So what is the treatment effect? That is an inference problem. So from the observational data, one typically use the causal discovery method to firstly, we obtain the causal graph. And based on the causal graph, we can use many of the causal inference methods to correctly estimate the different estimates. So the causal discovery in one sentence is it possible to discover the causal relations from purely observational data? So can we go beyond the data? We want to know the causal relationship from the data in this task. For another task, the causal inference is we want to estimate, for example, the individual treatment effect. We focus on a same individual, so we focus on the two different potential outcomes. So namely, say, the factual and the counterfactual. So the fundamental problem of the causal inference, like Neyman said, is we can only observe either of the potential outcome, but never both. And that is for the causal task. And in the community of large language models, I will give some opening as well. So let's focus on the Llama 3. So here I give a spurious correlation example in large language model. So if I ask the large language model a question, who does he refer to in the sentence? The physician hired the secretary because he is highly recommended. So you can guess what? So from this sentence, the Llama said, in the sentence, he refers to the physician. But from the human knowledge, we know that here he refers to the secretary, not the physician. Why the large language model got wrong? Because here I provide a very simple interpretation. So according to the labor statistics, she is more frequently associated with the secretaries than with the physicians. Because nowadays, the large language model is only limited to the statistical correlation rather than the causal conclusion. So that's why Llama 3 think it should be a physician, not a secretary. And another, insightful example would be the order for between the sentence. And another issue that I mentioned is I can use the spurious correlation to interpret. Actually, it's the order of the words in a single sentence. So let's say, so GPT-4 can correctly answer questions like the former. So the former is, who is Tom Cruise's mother? And the GPT told me Tom Cruise's mother is Mary Lee. So this is the correct answer. But if I ask the large language model, who is Mary Lee's son? The large language model will give me a wrong answer. So this is a very famous example. But so one possible reason I think is there is a high co-occurrence between the Tom Cruise following by the Mary Lee flavor, but not a reverse one. So if large language model only predicts next token without performs causal reasoning, so questions for B point to A, so the reverse direction will be more challenging. But as a human being, we know that this is equivalent, right? But you can see, due to the statistics, so nearly 80% of the time, so A point to B got correct, but only 1/3 got correct in the later case. And this is a more convincing example to show how causality can benefit the large language model. So you can see, here is a VQA task. So I ask a question. Let's say the first figure. So I ask the large language model, what sport is being shown on the screen? This is the question I asked to, let's say, a lava. And the large language model, you can see here I visualize some attention. So the blue attention are the correct one, but the red attention are in the real world case, the large language model focusing on the red one instead of the true blue one. So if I ask the large language model what spot is being shown on the screen, the large language model should focusing on the screen, right? The blue box. But actually, from some visualization, we know the large language model focusing on the red one. Why? This is because the co-occurrence of some concepts appear much more often than others. You can see here just a line upper to the question in the first figure. So I marked that the co-occurrence between the sport plus man is 213 times more than sport and the screen. Because when we say sport, we think there's a high probability that follows by a man, but not follows by a screen. So that's why the large model focusing on the mans instead of focusing on the screens. This is a spurious correlation, right? Because this is due to the high co-occurrence in the pre-training data. And the last example would be in the modality bias. So this is in the multimodality large language models, multimodality the large models. So you can see, I just give we can focus on the first left figure. So I ask a question, which country is hosting the next World Cup after this venue? And I provide a figure. So actually, this is a very famous stadium in Germany. So the GPT told me the next World Cup is the 2022 FIFA World Cup, which will be held on Qatar. But actually, this is wrong, because the figure that I provide is in the Germany. So the next one should be the 2010 World Cup held in South Africa. So because the large language model only focusing on the text instead of focusing on the graph. So because we know the GPT is trained by 2021. So that's why GPT think 2022 will be the next World Cup. Similarly, so we know many colleagues are from London, right? So this is a very famous figure in London called the Shard. If I ask the large model, what is the representative building of the designer of this building in Berlin? The GPT will always tell me the Shard, but this is not the answer that I want, right? So for this figure, this is the Shard. But the question is, so the man who designed the Shard designed what in Berlin? But in the multimodality large model, it just ignores the textual question here. So maybe we can use the SCM with some do calculus to mitigate this spurious correlation. And you can see this is the effects. So after you're doing the mitigating spurious correlation using some adjustment techniques, so you can see the attention got correct, finalized. Another funny example is, so if I ask the GPT, how can I kill a Python process? You can see the right side. The GPT told me I cannot provide you because kill something is illegal. But I don't want to kill a human being. I just want to kill a Python process. But it forbids me to do that. So I think this is this is also because the high co-occurrence between the kill and the illegal things. So this panel will be focusing on two sides. The first is how can causality benefit the large language models community. So we know. So previously I showed that some spurious correlation in large models is a very important issue, which will lead to hallucination, modality bias, safety, and fairness issues. So we know there are many mainstream approaches, but how to develop more effective methods or to improve them to mitigate the hallucinations of the large language models. And inversely, we're also focusing on how can the large model benefit the causality community, because many of the presenters, we talk about some great works in the causality community. So I want to ask that what is the advantage by using the large language models to solve the causal discovery or causal inference problem compared with the existing methods without the large language models? We know the existing methods, they didn't take the large language model into account. But by further incorporating the large language models, what is the advantages of introducing the large language models? So maybe you can use the large language model zero-shot ability, the word knowledge, or the large language model's ability to handling the non-structural texture data, like that. And I also want to ask what is the future research directions of all the speakers think. So that's all. Maybe we can start. Someone gonna to start first. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the purpose of, the strength of causal inference is that it can try to start with something kind of a host of connections that represent correlations in between a large number of variables, and try and hone in on the much smaller set of true sort of causal mechanisms, and and in doing so, it helps to sort of really explain, why you see relationships between things. And I was taken by the talk from the director from Huawei. I've forgotten his name, who's just in the front row here, who was saying how much more efficient the human brain is than large language models requiring 6 layers instead of 100 layers, and far fewer tokens, far fewer energy. And I think possibly it's because maybe the human brain is doing some kind of causal reasoning under the bonnet, rather than just sort of by brute force calculating lots of, by sort of having an answer for sort of every question, but the answer sometimes being very misleading. I certainly think large language models could massively improve their efficiency if they were to incorporate more of the tools of causal inference, where the aim is to try and come up with some sort of simpler truth compared to just a sort of brute force modeling of an entire sort of space of all sort of utterances that have ever been written down in human civilization. But I think that causal inference is people mainly propose statistical and causal inference techniques to be applied to data, where the data is in tabular form, and the nice aspect of lots of AI tools is that they can use sort of multimodal data. They can use images and text, and lots of different types of data can be all incorporated into these tools. So, so I think an emerging area for me is how causal inference approaches could make use of all of those different types of data to improve inferences.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So I think first it was a very nice presentation. Great examples, and I think it gives us food for thought. So the first thing that you mentioned here, I think that's something I've thought about a little bit, is if you have this analogy to the brain, the human brain, is that humans are actually quite good at causal thinking and very quickly, and they don't do randomized controlled trials and they don't have instrumental variables. So from that perspective, I think there are interesting questions raised about whether the ways we're going about causality are maybe not the best ways, because humans are very good at extracting these insights in much simpler ways, and they then can manage the world quite well, where causal understandings are important. The other thing is, I think the success of large language models is based on the there is a certain elegance to the approach, right? Which is you just have lots of data, you have very flexible models, you have clear benchmarks, and you just know exactly what good performance is and what bad performance is, and then you just throw a lot of man hours at it and try to tackle this problem very well. And I think causality is a much more muddy problem with unclear benchmarks, a lot more ad hoc. Usually you're just trying to understand a specific causal effect, and even with that you're already struggling. So right now I still think that there is quite a big barrier between the two. I think could concretely happen is that large language models, or AI in general, can help causality in certain settings, for example by creating data. The other way, I think we're still a handful of very good ideas removed from really incorporating causal knowledge into the models. I think the one idea that's pretty realistic, and that I think is already being done, is that one way to think about the causal one, and a lot of your examples are the causal mechanism, is that it's a bit more stable. So for example, in the pictures you've had, is yes, men and sport coincide, but if you kind of add a penalty for the model using these spurious correlations that don't pop up in every picture but only tend to co-occur, maybe you can force it away from exploiting this unstable information. So what you would need to do then, I think, is have models, your data labeled into like kind of boxes and then force the model to try to perform on all 6 simultaneously, even though it only gets to see one at first, so that it's kind of forced to only use the features that really have a causal effect and not these spurious correlations. And I think that's much more concrete, and like I said, I think is already happening.
Thanks. So a few thoughts. First, regarding what you were describing, the difference between how human thinks and how LLM seem to think, at least. We discussed this at lunch, so I have a few thoughts, especially regarding the type of information that we have, because in causality there's this causal order, which is the big thing, right? And we know the value of experimental data. Even if there's few of it, if we have a lot of observational data and a little bit of experimental data, it's much better than just a lot of observational data, right? So I think that as human, even the little amount of experiments that we can do in our everyday life actually matters a lot, and that might be, I mean, I don't know how LLMs could come and do experiments, but if we can manage to give them access to some simulations or such things, that might actually really enhance the reasoning process. If anybody wants.
Thank you. No, thank you very much for the introduction and the also your compliments so far. Maybe I can comment. For sure, there are several links between LLMs and causality. Maybe I can comment more on LLM for causality. Because I think that even if the opposite direction is more hype recently, there is still so much to do and so much potential in LLM for causality. Because I do believe that, I mean, a lot of scientific questions are inherently causal. And still, there are a lot of problems we could investigate further, and when I talk about causal inference open problem, are not necessarily referring about reaching the counterfactual level of reasoning. I believe that really often, for example, where as Jack was mentioning, when we deal with different modalities, already reaching causality mean is quite hard, and yeah, I do believe that finally we have the tools and the potential to tackle more complex problem and accelerate. Because, for example, now that we can deal with multimodality, we can also deal with a larger experiment, faster collection, and yeah, faster and cheaper collection. But yeah, I do believe that. Still, there is a need for methodologies to get scientifically valid AI-powered scientific discovery.
Well, I guess I don't know enough about LLM to make any comments. So right now, I'm kind of suspicious to both kind of research. So I have been to a couple of workshops about this LM and causality, but kind of quite suspicious to those kind of research I have heard about recently. So, so to me, it's like maybe this methodology to make LM successful, maybe can we use that kind of methodology to solve causal problems? Is that possible? Not like directly use LM for solving causal problems. So it's unclear whether that's helpful or not. The other direction is also unclear to me how exactly we can use the causal methodology to help LMs. Like LMs, like fundamentally I'm not sure that is, but you just input LM itself using how to use causality to improve it. I think you need a fundamentally different kind of framework to not just trying to say how to fit causality into LM. I'm not sure that will be that fruitful. I guess I'm suspicious.
Thank you for the presentation and for all the points that have been raised. I'm not an expert in LLM, and I cannot say that I'm an expert in causal inference, but from my understanding, there is, like, if I think about LLMs and how we use them, then they are based on some data set that have been merged, and already there I think we should pay some attention how we would use some kind of causal methodology on these regrouped data set that have been taken in different experimental settings. And yes, it's not clear to me, maybe it has been solved already, but how to answer to the question of identifiability, where we learn a particular model using LLMs, and what can we say about it, and what conditions we should have in order to have this kind of interesting properties that are result from the causal framework. So maybe it has been done, so I don't know, it's an open question, but yes, I don't know if someone, but yes.
Miki, can I just add something?
Yes.
I just want to comment on your previous position about human brain and our capability of for causal reasoning far beyond, like without even looking at observational or running a trial. I personally disagree in the sense that when we ultimately we are agent in the world, and the way we act, the way we interact, actually give us the access to interventional data, and this is a much more interesting setting than just looking at observational data. And I do believe that, I mean, this is what can offer like much more opportunities for higher causal reasoning. Finally, we are collecting these kind of data and also through artificial agents. So like I also want to stress like the potential of this framework, and for example, I don't know, active learning, etc., could be improved in this new paradigm, surely inspired by classic causal inference approaches.
No, I just want to say that your examples were really excellent, and I just wondered how much of that sort of reasoning is already baked into large language models. Because, for example, if you ask a question like, who is, I've forgotten who Tom Cruise's mother, who is Michelle Lee Pfeiffer's son, and the answer, it doesn't know, but it can answer the question in reverse, that it could to sort of tell you that, or explore the reverse question that it knows. So sort of, I suppose, what I think, how I think LLMs could be improved is giving more information about the reasoning behind the answer. So how did it get to the answer? What data did it use? So that human beings can have an actual conversation with an LLM, and it's not just a case of here's an answer, take it or leave it. It looks plausible, but it could be completely wrong as well. So how did the large language model generate the answer? What data did it use? And what further questions could you ask the large language model to further interrogate it to really understand whether you should believe the answer or not?
On that note, maybe somebody knows this better, but couldn't you just tell the LLM whenever it's called asked an A to B question and it fails, to also do the reverse one and then read it to itself and use that as input to answer the question. So if you can answer the question one way and the other way, it kind of just needs to be given the information. So just tell it to always look at both, right?
Yeah, that is one way for solving this problem.
Okay, so it's already done. All right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for all of you the comments. And I still have a question. So because I noticed that many of the speakers are working on the causal series, so instead of purely on the LLMs. So we know when doing causality, we need a lot of critical assumptions, right? So for example, when we're doing the causal discovery, we need a faithfulness assumption or something, etc. When we're doing, for example, when I'm doing the potential outcome framework, I need first there's no unmeasured confounder, which we call that this is ignorability or unconfoundedness. And we also need many, for example, the positivity assumption, the suitable assumption, like the consistency assumption, like that. When we're doing the PERS structural causal model, we also need some assumptions to identify, to make the targeted estimate be identifiable, right? So actually, I have talked that with Professor Jin, and I want to know. I have a view, but I'm skeptical about that as well. So I put forward this question here. So do you think the large language model can help us to mitigate or to relax some critical assumptions in the statistics community? For example, let's say no unmeasured confounder. Let's just using this as an example, right? So consider a tabular data. So only have limited feature variables, right? So the large language model, it clearly knows more. So more beyond this tabular data, right? Because it has a very massive pre-training data, and it knows the semantics, right? If you're just using some regression techniques, you're just using the numbers, the numerical information, but you ignore the semantic information. So can large language models do better by further incorporating that?
Yeah, so some coworker of mine did some work on this topic, so I'll try and try and say what I understood of this work, even though I'm not the main author. But the goal was in this work was when you don't even have any tabular data, and to try and do causal discovery using LLMs. So the first naive approach would just be asking the LLM to give you the graph, but this rarely works, and this is at least partially due to the fact that our common language is not completely causal, and a lot of time we use the word cause in our language and in writing to not mean directly causes, to mean is an ancestor of some kind. So in most of the literature, you won't have every variable that is well described even in scientific papers. Some variables are omitted, and you'll mostly get at most the causal order, basically. So you can probably get some further information, but I don't think you'll get all the way to the final product. And as for reducing assumption, I do not really see how that could be done easily, because I mean those different assumptions might be useful, but some assumptions are always needed, and that has been shown that you cannot do causal discovery using just observational data out of the blue and without adding any assumptions.
So yeah, just to complete a very concrete question of can you use LLMs to augment your information? I think that's already done. I think we had a guest speaker at UCD a couple months ago, and I think what he did is he would say something to the LLM, like the data about electoral behavior of districts in the US, ask the LLM to repeat it back to him, extract the tokens, and then apparently if you use that in your regression model, you will have more predictive accuracy than if you use the original data. So this idea to use LLMs to kind of get contextual information, I think that's already in the works.
The point is that I'm not sure that's replacing or satisfying assumptions that were not holding before. So my short answer to your question, can LLM go beyond some assumptions which are not satisfied? Short answer, no. I don't believe that, because there are a lot of impossibility results that are not holding even if we would have access to the real distribution. But still there is potential, and the potential is in the fact that maybe as a human can relate a small experiment with fixed experience. Maybe a model can see some patterns with other data it was trained on, and kind of try to transfer this data. So I don't believe that without some invariances or other assumption, we could go beyond this assumption. But at least I see two opportunities to leverage LLM in this setting. And as I mentioned before, leveraging multimodalities, so trying to extract more information, or for example, unobserved confounders from high-dimensional measurements we could get from other modality. And for sure, there is also this line of works trying to provide, trying to boost a classic causalist inference estimator with additional prediction from large language models, still guaranteeing some property of the estimator itself. I'm not sure I understood which work in particular you were referring to, but at least a couple recent works still guaranteeing a like classic double robustness in this setting.
Yeah, sorry. So due to the time limitation, I think before we end, I want to ask, so what do you think of the future direction in this research area? Because you can see there are increasing number of the research works focusing on benefiting from the causality from or for to the large models, right? So what do you think? And what do you think for the future directions?
For the future directions, I don't think LM itself is a future direction. I can imagine LMs kind of solved a particular kind of tasks. They are basically solved this very difficult task of learning from very complex, high-dimensional observational data to learn this probability distribution to make future predictions. So, of course, this is a very difficult task with a lot of applications. But if you think about the general causal understanding the world or AGI, I would think we need some kind of a new framework. While maybe LMs is part of the framework, some component of framework too, which can solve the task it's good to solving, rather than saying we'll rely on LM to achieve AGI, or trying to use LM to solve everything that we are trying to solve. So I think we should restrict we need a more general or different framework. So that's, I think, the future direction. We need a completely new idea. Maybe I am more like an assistant for something like those kind of framework. Word model. Yes, I think word model is actually, okay, there are different people mean different things, but this idea of word model, I think, is quite interesting. Yeah, I think it's something, yeah, we should definitely explore more. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we go nowhere.
No, I mean, I think what we all hope, or what from the future of generative AI is some kind of real intelligence that people can believe in. I mean, that I know I have one example, and I think there is of AI creating a new version of matrix factorization, right? So that's like a fundamental result that's made some statistical operation more efficient. But I think developing an AI tool that is genuinely intelligent and could solve the Riemann hypothesis or do something which definitely goes beyond what a human can do at the moment. I've got no idea whether that requires a paradigm shift in some kind of something beyond large language models. I guess then we all need to be worried if that's the case. But it is not just a tool for humans, but something which is, superhuman. But
so I think with some of the tasks you raised, I think there will be tinkering, and that will make things better. Like with the A causes B, B causes A, repeat the thing back to it. With the photos, have some robustness enforcing penalty on your loss. And we will get better at some of these tasks, and this will have real impacts. But I agree broadly that to really do a big jump and to really reason causally, we are, like I said originally, and I think you now repeated or said something similar, we are a couple good ideas away and maybe a whole new framework.
Okay, thank you so much. I think the time is approaching, and the next talker would be Julia Poor. Yeah. Thank you so much.